join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please take the roll call?
Councilmember Kluwer? Here. Councilmember Collins?
Here.
Councilmember Stearns is absent.
No.
Councilmember Stearns is arriving. Mayor Pro Tem Redmond?
Here.
Mayor Sacklet?
Here.
All right, so we'll move on to special presentation. And this is going to be about the Siskiyou Child Abuse Prevention Council Collaborative Proclamation. And I will simply be reading this here in the auditorium. All right, April 2024, the Siskiyou Child Abuse Prevention Council Collaborative Proclamation. Whereas, to become healthy adults, all children deserve to live in safe, stable, and nurturing homes and communities. Whereas, children are vital to Siskiyou County's prosperity and future success. Whereas, the people of Siskiyou County believe in the celebration of life, inclusion, and hope through our children, and deplore and condemn acts of violence committed upon the children in our communities. Whereas, the lives of children who have been hurt or lost to child abuse are honored by studying their stories in order to prevent future abuse and protect the innocence, health, and lives of all our county's children. Whereas child abuse, rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment impact our society. Whereas child abuse, neglect, and sexual assault prevention is a community responsibility affecting both the current and future generations. Whereas research has shown the enormous impact that positive parenting practices have on a child's social, emotional, and intellectual development and future success. Whereas communities that understand the importance of prevention and support for the well-being of citizens thrive and prosper. Whereas effective child abuse and sexual assault prevention succeed because of partnerships among citizens in all sectors of the county. Whereas April is the month to focus public attention on the needs of our children and prevention of sexual assault. Whereas with leadership dedication and encouragement, there is evidence that we can be successful in preventing child abuse and sexual violence in Siskiyou County. Therefore, we hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention and Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as well as April 6th through 12th, 2024 as Week of the Young Child. We call upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, elected leaders, and businesses to increase their participation in efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening families in the communities in which we live. Thank you.
Thank you, City Council. I'm Stephen Bryan. I'm the Regional and Program Director with the Siskiyou Community Resource Collaborative, which includes 7 family and community resource centers throughout Siskiyou County, as well as your own Mount Shasta Community Resource Center. And I'm here on behalf of the Child Abuse Prevention Council Committee for Siskiyou County. And I know it's a lot of titles that are going on, but here just to bring in awareness to April, which is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and wanted to let you know about some special activities we're doing here right in Mount Shasta and South County. The biggest one is Kids Day Festival. We do it every year. It is in Weed at Bell Park, but it's a joint effort with Mount Shasta, Dunsmuir, Weed, and McLeod Community Resource Centers. We served over 1,100 people last year, and we're looking to do even more this year. Here in Mount Shasta for Week of the Young Child on April 12th. We're encouraging all schools and daycares to wear blue in honor of Child Abuse Prevention Month and plant pinwheel gardens, which you'll see those popping up all throughout the county with yard signs bringing awareness to child abuse prevention. We do play groups at the Resource Center every Monday morning from 10 to 11:30 to help with young families, get them out of isolation, let them build their own networks, strengthen friendships and connections to the community, and whatever concrete supports that we could provide to families so they can be more focused on raising their children in the proper way and modeling good behavior. We have parenting classes. We have a Thursday morning parenting class for grandparents and relative caregivers raising their nieces and nephews and grandchildren. That's been ongoing since pre-pandemic. It's the longest running parenting class in Siskiyou County, and it's right here in Mount Shasta. And we're starting a new one on April 30th, Tuesday afternoons, called Attachment Vitamins. It's for prenatal to 5-year-old families. So just bringing some awareness to what we do to help mitigate abuse and neglect, which unfortunately Siskiyou County ranks high in. And I brought some packets here for you to review at your leisure. So thank you.
He beat you, so
Okay.
go ahead. Councilmember
I missed the, I missed the date for the Weed Kids Day Festival.
April 20th, Bel Air Park, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We've received more funding and support this year than ever before, so it's going to be quite the extravaganza. Free food, everything's free, 100% complimentary. We have multiple bounce houses, obstacle course, farm animals, free food, hot dogs, tacos from Casa Ramos. Rotary is a big supporter with the hot dogs and chips. We do pancakes and sausage. There's over 25 vendors, all doing free activities with children and their families.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent.
Yep.
Councilmember Collins.
You mentioned funding. Just a quick question on Proposition 1, because I believe these programs are funded through the Family Resource Centers.
Yeah, not all of our programs are funded through Prop 1, but we do provide a lot of services with Prop 1. What Prop 1 is going to affect the funding that we receive from the Mental Health Services Act.
That was my question.
Yep.
Do you have any idea how Prop 1 will affect the funding of these programs?
Yeah, it'll be negative because we're going to lose a lot of funding. All that funding is going to be redirected to housing for the homeless and programs for those individuals. So yeah, it's going to be a big hit to the entire county and a lot of organizations that do preventative and early intervention work. We are working with SCOE, the Siskiyou County Office of Education, and our local schools to work together to see how we can mitigate those finances that we're going to lose in providing the services. So we're always looking for other grants and partners and organizations to help us continue to do work like Girl Circles and boys councils and parenting classes, mental health workshops. We're getting ready to start a Living Long and Well series at Eschaton to support the seniors. So there's a lot of work that we do with the Mental Health Service Act that we'll no longer have access to. Thank you. You're welcome.
No other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. Very informative. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Yep.
All right, now we are on agenda item number 4, public comment. In this item, those who would like to comment for 3 minutes can do so on items not on the agenda or items in the consent agenda. And we always start with the people in the auditorium, and then we'll move on to those using our internet service. All right, our first speaker is Willard Felsen. Yes, Kathy?
A couple of weeks ago, I had a fall over on Alma Street. Now, there's a short stretch between the Forestry Service parking lot and Mount Shasta Boulevard that's hazardous because there's a pile of rubble there, chunks of concrete, some macadam rocks. Now, most of that stretch is okay, but there's a very short stretch that's hazardous. And I'm appealing to the council to take the initiative to get it straightened out. I don't know if that particular piece of property belongs to the city or to the railroad, but either way, I hope it'll get corrected.
Thank you for your comments and for your letter. Appreciate that. All right, so staying with the folks in the auditorium, Johanna, you want to speak?
Yes, please.
All right, so repeat your name and...
Johanna L. Torfer, Mount Shasta. And I'm here before you tonight because I sent an email just a little bit ago. I finally had a minute to write it up. But I've been thinking about this for a few years now because of our meeting space here and the acoustical challenges we have and all the setup and whatnot that we go through. And with the I attended the library expansion meeting last week, which was really a phenomenal presentation. Todd introduced the consultants, Noel and Tam, very articulate and forward-thinking consultants, I think. So I think they'll do a really good job for our city. And they asked us for ideas. And one of my ideas was that we have a community meeting room. And with this community meeting room, it can be utilized in different ways, like during the day for the library, and you can have the space inside and have a place flowing from the inside to the outside for larger meetings and all of that. But one of the really cool things that I realized is that the city of Mount Shasta can actually save somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it's $32,000 to $34,000 a year by setting this up. And that's why I'm before you today, because not only are we talking about budgets tonight, but, and I know this is probably not going to happen until 2026, but we could be saving in the neighborhood of $32,000 to $34,000 a year annually for having our hybrid meetings for the 3 meetings that we have currently for the 2 city council and the planning commission. And I got some preliminary numbers from our June 2023 meeting where 22nd Avenue's contract was discussed. So I'm still trying to get some numbers for weed. But for example, my understanding is they only pay around $4,000 or $5,000 a year to host all of their meetings because they're able to run the meetings remotely and not bring all the equipment in and bring it back. And anyway, I'm just really excited about this space, and I really hope that you'll all encourage the library expansion project to really rethink, and I really believe it should be it can be a really great community venue. I'm hoping it's going to be lots of light and open airy feel and just kind of a happy space because that's conducive to learning and to community and all of that. So anyway, you can take a look at the email. I have some other thoughts in there and organization and whatnot. And so hopefully, and anyway, just for your thoughts.
Thank you, John. I'm happy that you're so enthusiastic about that potential project.
To the chair.
Why is it potential?
Oh, well, you'll hear why later.
Oh,
Something
no.
about $1,200 a square foot.
Well, Johanna, I wanted to mention that your idea is part of the preliminary plan, and our overall part of LTAC's overall scope is to have exactly what you're saying, the meeting room that can move into a council chambers. So that's definitely part of what we're all hoping will be achieved.
That's wonderful, and it was actually part of his presentation
Oh, good.
as one of the ideas that they've done in other cities. So I believe there's a lot of support for this kind of thing in other communities as well, and I really think this would help us tremendously for our situation here, but also financially. So,
I agree.
Anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you for that input.
Anybody else in the audience would like to speak for 3 minutes? All right, no, there are no more speakers, and there's no hands raised? Wow, all right. Thought there'd be. Sure. Do I have my pen? Yes, I do. And I think, is this going to be the official thing? The official general stamp. Another one? Okay. Oh, no, it's fine.
I just want some more screen.
25th. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So staff will, item number 5, council and staff comments. We almost always start with the city manager, so we'll do it this time too. Todd.
Okay, sort of a long list, and if I miss something, please feel free to ask me to fill you in on it. I am getting a draft letter of intent from Pinsino Holdings for tying up the landing for a year to do planning and feasibility studies for a phase 1 development that they will be talking to both Hyatt and Marriott, and they would like to build as a first phase again, a 125 bed to 150 bed higher end hotel. And, you know, we've talked about other programming down the line, and, you know, they're very open to what we have there. And I told them the thing that we need to do to ensure that this gets off the mark is once we have the feasibility study done as a draft, we need to start public outreach and understand what the community wants to see there. And, you know, as long as they can get a project to pencil, they're very open-minded. This is the same group that has been in front of council very early 2000s and then 2006. And this is according to them. The issue revolved around whether or not, you know, the council could come to a fixed number to sell the property, and apparently fell apart because nobody could settle on that. Now, I am trying to tie up Chuck Ryan again for a commercial appraisal, and now that we have an EPA clean bill of health, and we know what we can do on the site and what we can't, it should be pretty easy to you know, come up with a valuation. So that's going to be in the works here really soon. We have, as you all recall, we tied up 514 Chestnut Street. That's Alan Brownell's property. And so I have agreement on a sublease agreement for the building and the paved parking lot that would carry us through August 31st. If we decide not to purchase the property, potentially this person or parties could enter into a long-term lease with the owner, with Brownell. But we have option on deciding whether or not we want to purchase these properties based on whether we can come to an agreement on the commercial appraisal versus any environmental cleanup that we need to do out there. But what this does is having somebody in that building paying what we are paying for that building and that paved portion, we're able to recoup some of our cost and put that back in the pockets of DEAC for some of the projects that they are working on. So I should have that approved and wrapped up tomorrow. You know, one of the members of our community already mentioned Nolan Tam here. That was a success in terms of going in front of the Library Expansion Committee and the public outreach meeting. We don't believe we reached everybody, so I've worked with Nolan Tam to put a survey together along with a QR code. We're going to figure out a place on the city website this week that we can post that, and also the same information and QR code to be at the library's front desk, so we can see if we can collect some input from users and other members of the community that couldn't make a midday meeting. We're, you know, there really isn't a good time to put this together, but it's on our long list, but might as well get on it. Jeff Mitchum and I are working on that revamp of the short-term rental ordinance to clarify, you know, some vague language, and also to delineate the definition for bed and breakfast, and capture some of the stuff after this passed that, that we need to clarify. And it's in the works. It'll need to go to the Planning Commission and then back to us, but it's coming pretty soon. The next piece is we've been approached by Amazon about providing a last mile solutions. They're looking for 5,000 square feet to place a 26-foot container that they would show up with every day. They also need 6 spaces for flex vans and some bathroom facilities, as well as a shelter for drivers. And we've got one city location that we're looking at. That's the Public Works yard. And the other is a private location that they're evaluating for us. And they want to do it for a year to see if they want to figure out about doing this permanently. So it's kind of a trial run for a year. Finally, well, I mean, there's more, but if you have any questions, let me know. Cosmont is working on paperwork for the updated EIFD, and they'll have their LOI updated and ready for the first meeting in April. So we can then move forward with an updated and current EIFD proposal that will then go to the state, but then we're then able to pull the finance committee together that we put together for this project. And first meeting is for Joe Dieguez to kind of lay down the ground rules and what's the kind of EIFD 101 for the participants, and then move on from there. But that's the big stuff. There's a lot more, obviously. So if you have any questions about other initiatives.
To the chair.
Go ahead, Council Moore.
I wanted to, I hear some of the rumor mill out on the streets. So I thought this would be a good time to address some of that. Hopefully some of the naysayers are watching to get clarity. Number one is that the drainage increase has to do with the mud flows on county property.
Completely separate issue. Again, my opinion, I would need to preface that, so I'm, we don't get ourselves in trouble, but many of us know that Upton Highlands, when they moved into that subdivision, they had to sign an agreement that they wouldn't sue if there were mud flows and there were issues. Again, my opinion, I'm not an engineer, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist, in my opinion, to say the approval of this subdivision by the Board of Supervisors didn't pass the smell test when you're talking about putting up geoblocks to block mud flows, when you can easily go onto YouTube and watch during typhoons city buses being carried away. And so there is, it may be something that we chase if we aren't getting the response that we need from the county. But I think that at least the engineer that put this plan forward holds some culpability, potentially the Board of Supervisors, because the HOA, frankly, is not going to have the money to take care of all of this. But they're absolutely separate. And we're seeking, for the stuff that's happened, we are seeking FEMA reimbursement right now.
Great. Second one is one of my more favorite rumors that has been brought to me a few times, that the city is aiding the housing of some illegal aliens in the One Shasta property. So if you could.
Yes,
okay.
I got several emails on this. And the first email, kind of the disseminator of information to this crew. And I told them that I've worked with this party and they're reputable, ethical, and this is not something they'd be involved in. And I got confirmation from them to that fact. And also one of the members of the group behind this actually drove to where this is all supposedly happening, and it wasn't. So it's a non-existent ghost issue.
Thank you.
Any more rumors?
Yeah, I drove around that property. I was one of the people that did that. No, there's nothing going on there. There's Wilson Construction. I think they're the group that's putting up a lot of the poles, including here. Go ahead, Tim.
In terms of the proposed LOI, would that be for east side, west side, or both sides?
Both.
And is there a dollar to go along with the LOI?
We can't come to that conclusion until they do a feasibility study and they do the planning for it. At the same time, we don't know what the property is worth until we get a commercial appraisal back.
Well, I wasn't talking about purchase price, but locking up the property for a year has obviously value to them. Is there some payment to the city in exchange for the LOI, for locking up the property for a year?
That's all part of the negotiations, and they know that while we appreciate, their efforts in coming forward and actually taking this seriously and wanting to see this get built, they are tying up the property from another very reputable company that would like to develop it. It's not the right time for them. In fact, this other party...
K2?
Yeah. Okay. And they've agreed they'll help this group if they're wanting to do affordable, which they've intimated they do, and in building that and working to get the funding for it if Pinsonneau Holdings wants them to. But the guys at K2 are awesome. They're not quite ready. They're starting a 49-acre affordable housing project in Shasta Lake in the spring with a ground floor commercial that will span the entire length of Shasta Dam Boulevard. They're finishing a project in Oroville and another one in Reading. They're definitely interested. Daniel Knott, one of the brothers, bought a house. He's living up here half-time, and there is an international planning firm, and they're really close friends. This person bought a house above Lake Siskiyou, and he's agreed that if they move on this project, that he'd be involved. And they usually do projects like the Sphere in Vegas and a lot of international projects, so they don't normally do small markets. But now that they're up here and they're really sold on Mount Shasta and the opportunities, they're really interested. The problem is, if I've got a preference for one developer or another, I don't want to say, but when we lock this up, we potentially freeze out another developer, but we don't want to pass up an opportunity for development to wait out an LOI from somebody a year down the road, and then they both implode.
Right, and we don't want to give that opportunity or give up that opportunity.
Right.
Without some sort of compensation and without making sure that whoever receives the benefit of the LOI has some skin in the game.
Oh, yeah, there'll be...
we don't want it to be a no cost to them situation.
So part of it is, I was on the phone with them, with the Siskiyou Economic Development Commission, and we are chasing $150,000 in planning and feasibility studies or funding, which is pretty easy to get through the EPA, especially because we're a clean brownfield site. We have preferential treatment, and so we are working on that aspect, but they're going to be dumping a lot of money into the work they do with the hotel developers and just pre-work. But I haven't seen the terms they come back with, and I need to look at it and evaluate it when it comes in, and I've been promised tomorrow.
And has Chuck Ryan given any?
No answer. And the last time I heard, this was 2 weeks ago, he was on a cruise, and he hadn't gotten back to us on when he can start. He's already signed up to do the commercial appraisal on the 3 Brownell parcels. Right. And we're hoping, since he's recently retired and he lives here, that he will, he's interested in seeing things happen. we're hoping that he picks it up. Otherwise, we got a year wait. Any commercial appraiser that has the right stamp from Sacramento to Medford is all giving us times a year out.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, Chief, you have any comments?
A couple things for council tonight. First, you may have seen in the press release that we arrested somebody for felony child abuse and felony assault on the officer. Just an update on the officer. He received several kicks to the face, chest, and shoulder area. We were able to, with the assistance of firefighters on scene, because he was solo at the time, we're able to restrain that individual, and then when the other officers showed up, we were able to successfully deploy the RAP unit, which prevents suspects from being able to kick, hit, headbang, or anything. It's a nice, safe way to do it. He did go to the hospital and was treated. He's been cleared to come back to duty. He's going to be a little bit sore, but no major injuries for him. So, and then if you'll bear with me here. I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce our newest dispatcher, Lauren Cardiel. She had worked for us previously as a dispatcher, left for bigger, better things, and has returned to us. We're really excited to have her. She knows the city, she knows the system, and I think she's going to be a great long-term employee for us. So I just wanted council to meet our new dispatcher.
Well, thank you. All right, Ken Kellogg, Public Works Director. Any comments?
I have no comments
Okay, well,
or input.
I have one question for you. Prior to us going to consent agenda, you're 100% positive that the wastewater treatment plant is complete. There are no problems, and we can, through the consent agenda, pass that item, right?
Yes, you may pass it. There are a couple of minor tweaks still have to be done. We're working out, and they're under warranty. Clark Construction is signing extended warranty on these issues that has to do with the ultraviolet disinfection units. But they've got a good handle on it, and yes, it's under warranty, and I have no hesitation in moving forward with the notice of completion.
The big thing here is, is the gist of this, is this minor stuff that's left, it all can be covered under warranty work. So I feel very comfortable seeing this through. And, if we have them in presenter's room, I asked Grant to be on the line just in case anybody's got questions for him, but I'm very comfortable with moving this forward.
Finance Director, do you want to comment at this point? You're going to be on deck? Yeah, okay. All right, so council members, so you're good, right? All right, so council members, any other comments before we move on? No. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, updates, Todd, for these committees.
No meeting. There was a subcommittee meeting of just the members, and I wasn't, not that I wasn't invited, I wasn't part of it.
For DIAC?
Yeah, and I mean, the big, the gist of it was, not to make light of it, but who took our cheese, and the fact that tying up the Brownell property is cutting into money of things that they've been working on. They were a highly effective group, and hopefully getting this lease with Jesse Ramirez and Welding will help put some of that money back into their coffers. So,
does everybody understand what that's about? Okay,
Perhaps
so
you can
I'll
expand on
summarize.
that.
So yeah, so the city is pursuing, well, we've entered into a sublease for the 3 parcels that were formerly Beers. Well, actually, Beers still has the lease until August 31st. Jesse Ramirez Welder approached us possibly through some DIAC member. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
and wants to sublease the building and the parking lot to help, and it will help offset our costs and therefore replenish DX fund partially. Because the money to pay for the rent on that property is coming from the DX fund.
The downtown parking fund.
Got it.
Yeah, and they're a highly effective group. And, essentially I've got sublease language worked out with Alan and with Jesse. I just need to send something over on letterhead one last time to Alan Brown. Alan, make sure he's okay. And should be able to I talked to Jesse earlier in the day to get it signed either tomorrow or the day after.
All right, so let's move on to consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, March 11th, 2024, regular and special meetings. We were all here for that, correct? Okay. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable, March 8th, 2024, total gross payroll and taxes for period ending March 3rd, 2024. C, monthly investment and revenue report. D, committee minutes, Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee for January 31st and February 28th, 2024. And finally, E, resolution accepting the state-mandated wastewater treatment and disposal improvements. Someone make a motion, please?
I will move to approve consent agenda items A through E by title only.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Specifically, what resolution number is it?
CCR-24-06.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
That would be the number E. Good point. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There we go. Now we get on to the fun stuff. Item number 8, the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2024-25. And Muriel Terrell, our finance director, will introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is the requested 24-25 budget that was requested in January to have to you in 60 days, which I have done for you. One of the things I was not able to do is the appropriation limit, which is a requirement that needs to be done by June. Unfortunately, the growth rates do not come out until May, so that actual calculation cannot be done until June, which will be brought to you then. It's based on the taxes that are collected, and it has to be a certain percentage. We've always been under the appropriation limit over the past few years. It's just a mathematical calculation that is required to be done every year, but again, can't be done because the growth rates aren't published until May. Anyway, with that, what you do have before you is a 24-25 budget in which all of our department heads got together and got me all of their information for all of the expenses for their departments. I always start with salaries and benefits, which is calculated from the authorized position, which is also a part of what has been presented to you tonight. The biggest difference in the pluses and minuses going through all of this is the increase in TOT, which takes effect July 1st, which getting to the end of the story somewhat, at least in the general fund, instead of about a $500,000 shortfall, that shortfall is now just around $300,000. All of the salaries and benefits are in line with what we've had in the past. Actually, the amount of salaries and benefits relate to about 63, almost 64% of the general fund budget. The rest of it is supplies and maintenance and those sorts of things. If and I know you have questions, or if you need more explanation for anything throughout this budget, please ask. Some of the other things, which I've just kind of breezed over, the special revenue funds for this year, at least in the gas tax funds, we were going to try to do some projects this year. However, the county road department is not available to do that in this fiscal year, which means we'll be pushing some of that work out into the 25-26 budget year for things like chip seals and those sorts of things. We're working in some other areas to try to get some funding through CDBG and some of the other types of things moving forward for some more street work, just to keep you all in the loop. Enterprise funds, of course, we're looking at the 218 process, which I have presented as if it has gone through. We don't know that yet. Of course, that would change if the Proposition 218 fund or Proposition 218 process for the drainage fund does not come to fruition, then that particular budget would certainly change. That's about it. So any questions you may have in this 24-25 preliminary budget, please ask the questions, and I'm happy to do that.
All right, so let's be disciplined. This is clarifying question time, and then we'll go to public comment, and then come back for unstructured discussion. So, you seem ready to go, Councilperson Clore?
Thank you. Under the administrative expenses for city manager, the proposed budget is significantly higher than the actuals. Is that due to the city planner coming in where?
So are you looking at the 23-24 mid-year, or are you looking at the 24-25 budget?
I'm looking at the final budget for 23-24, mid-year budget, and then the actual.
So what you have there, I wanted to update you because we did have audited figures for beginning balances. So what you're looking at is information that I've already given you back in January, February, somewhere around there for mid-year. The only differences there are the beginning fund balances, which are now audited balances.
Okay. And then second question is, Muriel, myself, and Mayor Steckleth attended a presentation about what to do with rising pension costs and how to mitigate that. I'm assuming the direction that we're hopefully going to go in aren't reflected in this budget.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Collins, questions?
In the 23-24 budget, there's a drainage loss of $73,000. Does that money come out of the general fund, or what fund does that come out of? Is there enough money in the drainage fund to fund that?
Well, again, that's going to be something that can and would be made up if the Proposition 218 process goes through. If it does not, as I have said in my report, that funding would have to come from somewhere else. The general fund, the Economic Enhancement Fund, somewhere else would have to make up that shortfall. That is the cost for the contract for the folks that are doing the study.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So
in this year's budget?
in this year's budget,
Okay. So we haven't written that check yet. That loss is just shown even though we haven't paid
no,
it.
we've paid them. We've paid them, and that loss shows up in that particular fund, and we will determine by the end of this fiscal year where that money's going to come from. It may be a short-term loan from the general fund that would then make that fund whole, and then once the new rates go into effect, then the general fund would be repaid. If it doesn't go through, then we have to do some other sorts of things. So that's going to be determined in the future, which again is in the report.
The drainage fee piece. One of the things that we were told in passing any kind of measure in 218, whatever, city staff can't advocate one way or another for the passage of a tax. One thing that we can do, we'll have the reasons listed on the ballot. There's 5 reasons that we can list, and it's failing and aging infrastructure is number 1. They usually pick the top reason to, on the ballot. But one of the things, reading some of the comments out there, is a disbelief that, we have this dire need. And so we checked with John Kenny, and as long as it's factual information, we can put that on our website. And we're going to put sometime this week on the website the list of projects, the dollar amount, and actually a short narrative on how bad the infrastructure is right now and what it means in the long run if it isn't fixed. We have stuff that's failing, which is going to end up affecting a lot of different projects and types of infrastructure down the road, and we're going to have a multiplier effect if we don't take care of this.
And presumably affecting property values as well.
Absolutely.
Muro, just a few more questions if I can. In the in our current budget, 23-24, we have a $510,000 loss. Does that include the roughly $90,000 in new software that we bought in the previous meeting that we approved?
Yes.
Oh, great. Help me understand, is it so that some public works salaries are pushed out of the general fund and into specific enterprise funds relative to the amount of work that those people do on those projects?
Absolutely.
Is there any strategy to, because it appears those enterprise funds are quite healthy, would you?
I wouldn't say that.
The storm drainage.
Are they starving?
Drainages.
Drainages, and so is water.
No, well, anywhere but drainage.
Yeah. Not starving per se, but the issue is this. Public Works documents their time for where they spend it. If they're working in water, it's documented on their time card for water. If they're working in sewer, it's documented that they're working in sewer. That is how the cost is determined and how it is recognized in each of those funds. To strategize, for lack of a better term, to have water, sewer, or anything else for that matter, pay for public works folks that aren't doing those particular things would be against the law.
At this particular moment, I will neither confirm nor deny that that was the strategy I was going for.
It's an honest question.
But you
No,
can't.
it's a good question.
You can do inter-fund loans.
Absolutely.
And so you can do these things, but it has to be
I was heading down
transparent.
that, actually, in a bit more seriousness. We have approximately $680-ish thousand of annual salaries in public works that isn't allocated to any enterprise fund.
It would be allocated to streets and roads, snow removal, building repair and maintenance, central garage for the repairs and maintenance of the fleet. all general fund, and documented as such.
Is it okay if I put off all the rest of my questions because they're in the middle of a narrative about where things are, and a lot of questions that I've got, but till we get back to, is that okay?
You want to do it in open
Yeah,
session? Okay.
yeah.
All right, so no more clarifying questions. All right, so we'll go to public comments, and those in the audience that would like to comment on our preliminary budget for 24-25, feel free to come up and speak. Come on up. Just do it the right way.
Hi, it's Johanna. I just had a quick question. Jeff was asking about the $90,000 charge for the software and whether it was included in the 510 deficit number. And I was just curious, is that depreciated or amortized at all in that 510, or is the full 90 in there?
In the general,
the cash is gone, but
there are two things that happen in the general fund. The general fund does not recognize depreciation, for one. It's recognized in another way in the financials, so it's expensed. However, part of that software cost is picked up by the sewer fund as well as the water fund. In that case, that will be recognized. Part of it will be recognized on the fixed asset list for all of those, and would be depreciated over time. The annual fees that will be done each and every year is expensed. The part that is on the fixed asset schedule is the actual software and installation of such, which is the larger piece of the pie there for the software.
okay, thank you. And do you know how much that was offhand?
As far as
The amount that's being depreciated on the fixed
depreciation
assets?
would be based on the life of the asset, which I believe, and I'm not sure yet because I haven't actually placed it on the fixed asset yet, since we actually haven't paid for it yet, would be, I believe, something like 15 years, 10 or 15, I'm not sure. But that's
Okay.
what would
That's a
happen.
long time.
So it's going to be a small, it'll be a small charge on the enterprise funds
Correct.
that Muriel's talking about, but on the general fund, it's going to be a large charge.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so over to hands raised. Nobody's interested in the budget. Okay, but we are. So
Always the bridesmaid.
back to discussing what we have here. So who would like to chime in first? We'll start with Tim.
Yes, sir.
No comments. You're
Not at this point.
You're okay with $300,000 loss? You're good. Okay, Jeff.
Well, that's an offhand comment, but you'll recall that a year or two ago, we factored in losses for a period of time.
It's this dollar amount was predictable, predicted, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not surprising. No, I think we outright thought we'd lose 300,000. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I should start with kind of a different perspective on that, on the headline, which is how much money we're losing. We lost about $500,000 in 22-23. We're going to lose about $500,000+ in 23-24. And at the moment, $310,000 in 24-25, with the $240,000 revenue increase because we passed a 2% increase in TOT. Without that, we'd lose another $500,000. Why that's happening is really not a terrible mystery. Our revenues aren't going up. Our revenues have been below the inflation rate, in some cases significantly below the inflation rate, and that the math doesn't work. We end up spending more than we've got. We all got into this with salary increases thinking we were going to lose roughly $1 million over the 3 or 4 years. And by the end of June, we will have lost $1 million, which is why, just for clarity's sake, again, I'm feeling very insistent on finding a way to a balanced budget for next year. That, for me, is a non-negotiable scenario. How we get there is, so there's lots of options. And just let me start, because we have several department heads here, and Ken, I've spoken to you directly about this, but Chief also, so you know this as well. I don't see any need to reduce staff or have a reduction in salaries for any staff, just so we're clear about that. I think there's plenty of room in the budget to come up with a balanced budget without any of that. The general fund, our reserve in the general fund has gone from 2.6 million roughly in last year down to, depending on which number, because
At the end of last year, it was about 2.3 after the audits and the audit.
I thought actually the audit said 2.7 and the budget said 2.6.
Or 23.
No, for last year, 22, 23.
Right. And
2.7 this year, we'll end up with 2.1. No, excuse me, this year we'll end up with 1.15 or 5.5.
1.7.
Yeah, depending on whose number's right.
Right, so the prior year,
Right, was 2.7. Was 2.1.
2.1, 2.3.
Yeah, depending on the numbers, right. The proposed budget brings us down to somewhere between a 19 and a 17% reserve fund. And I'm assuming this does not include any monies that would be spent on any parking lots that we have gone into lease or sublease agreements in. There's no placeholders in the budget for that.
It wouldn't be in the general fund anyway. If you're talking about parking, it would be in Fund 66, not Fund 10.
Did you add the equipment replacement fund in your reserve calc?
No, yeah, it's in here. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know what I don't know what a 60.
The DEAC parking fund is not a part of the general fund. It is a special revenue fund.
Well, if we spent a few $100,000, arbitrary number, just picking a number,
Okay.
on a parking lot, that money would literally have to come from someplace else because there is no money in the DEAC fund.
That is correct, and as in history will show, the parking lot that is behind Parker Plaza right now, that particular parking lot was done some years ago, and it was done through, as Councilmember Stearns will attest, through a loan from the general fund that was paid for through the parking fees that are collected and were paid back to the general fund using the rate of interest that at the time was a fair interest rate at the time. So the parking fund then paid back the general fund for that parking lot over time, and it was paid off probably 10, 11, 12 years ago.
What was the payback period on that? I think, was it 3?
Well, it was at the time, of course, this is before I was actually working for the city.
Yeah.
At the time, it was what the parking fund could afford, over time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's $9,000, $10,000 a year would be what they could afford. And so they paid for it over the number of years necessary to pay it off. I don't remember what it was. It was before I ever got here,
yep.
So it was maybe 20 years. I don't know.
Yep, okay.
The budget that we've been presented shows a revenue increase of about $450,000 over this year.
Mm-hmm.
And total administration and finance goes up about $85,000. Police and fire go up $314,000. And which is about 9% increase. Building and operations is flat, goes down about 10,000, and public works goes up a little, goes up 24,000. Do you have any idea why?
Yeah, one of the things that happens is that when you look at the authorized position list, and when we approved the increase in wages, all of those people that work for us every year move from a position to a B to a C, all the way through up to 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and at each step there's an increase in wages. So for folks that have just started, each of the first 5 years they're going to get a 2.5% increase in wages each and every year. That's what's built into the authorized position spreadsheet that you've seen every year for as long as I've been here and many, many years before that. The other thing, at least for police, there was an increase in at least one position, which is being paid for through Proposition 64. There's actually 3 positions that are being paid in the police department through Proposition 64. So there's an offset there, which is a part of the increase in the revenue side of it, as you talked about, which is the Proposition 64 revenue coming in for those particular positions, as well as what they also pay for, which is also an expense in the police area for our efforts with the Boys and Girls Club, as well as a position at the high school that is being paid for through Proposition 64 funds to expand the program for cannabis and drug prevention use from middle school all the way through high school. That's what the proposition thing is. It's a large amount of money, and that is reflected in the general fund budget that's been presented to you.
I just want one other thing to add on there is because of COVID-19 and that stuff, so we've had things that were budgeted in 1 year that are hitting 2 years later that weren't necessarily budgeted. For example, we have a $200,000 expenditure for this budget, which was supposed to have been spent last year. That is 100% funded by Prop 64 again. So that's, even though it's reflected, it's still ongoing, and it's all fully reimbursed back to us for that, along with those 3 positions at Prop 64, not only is it the salaries and benefits factored in there, it's the fuel, it's the tires, it's the vehicles, it's their phone bills, and that's for 3 full-time positions, so. Yeah.
One last, just kind of in the question, and then I've got one for the council to discuss or suggest we discuss. There's a $99,000 charge for snow removal in the 24-25 budget. And maybe, I don't know if this is a Muriel or a Ken question, but were we intending to take those monies and charge and allocate them across all, or at least some part across the
This is what happens for snow removal, just to go back in time. That's the amount that we charge basically every year for snow removal. Whether or not that's actually what happens, that's a whole nother story. So what happens is when mid-year comes, or actually this time of year, when for instance, last year you got a budget that said, oh my goodness, we had a lot more snow removal this year than we had in any of the previous years, and it's reflected in the mid-year budget or a budget that comes after that. And what happens is that more money is recognized in snow removal, which then, because it's a finite number, so then the other things within the general fund could be enterprise funds as well. Those amounts are reduced. We can't, because we have people working in snow removal, they're not doing road repairs. They're not doing work on the sewer or water. They're doing snow removal. So that amount gets spread differently based on where they actually spend their time.
And I'm sorry, I clearly didn't make myself clear. You've been wonderful in explaining that that's how the process works over the years. What is changing is our reallocation of costs for snow removal towards users that are in the, well, it used to be just a downtown district, but one of the proposals that we'll bring will be to all those that get center plowing, and there's a couple of options for all of us to review. Will that change that number significantly?
Well, it's not going to change the expense. The expense is going to stay the same, whereby...
Relative to the general
But the
fund.
revenue side of it, if you're charging people for snow removal activities, then there would be a revenue source that would be recognized in the general fund. The snow removal cost for public works people would not change. It's going to be based on actual cost.
Right.
It's going to be based on the actual cost for contractors that have to move the snow. If we're doing additional stuff where we're paying contractors to remove the snow in the southern part on Mount Shasta Boulevard, that would be an additional cost. Now, whether or not we actually recognize that in a separate department, we could do that to where we would isolate, southern snow removal versus northern snow removal. Whatever those types of things, whatever would work best for being able to identify those costs, that would be something we would need to do. It's not reflected in this budget. Right.
Yeah, and with the current proposal, obviously the point is cost recovery, which we haven't done at all. And my opinion on shoveling sidewalks when they're the property of the owner. I've never seen that before, and if we want to continue to do that, then we need to make sure that it's paid for.
Right. So just my last question, which is, it's kind of not to be answered at this time. It's just it's the hypothetical question, which is, are we remotely in agreement that we should have a balanced budget next year? Because I don't know if we think we should or not.
To the chair. This is quasi jumping ahead to the next agenda item, which is the audit, but I think it's pertinent here as well. When Charlie Pillen was up going over the audit, an auditor's job is not to audit whether the city is in good financial health and that sort of thing, but we did talk about it, and he said something extremely poignant about the deficit, which of course I have forgotten. So if Muriel or Mayor remembers exactly his wording, please jump in. But basically, from my memory, it was, this is anticipated, this is what a reserve is for, and if we can mitigate that in a slow reaction, non-reactionary way, then that is the best way to do it. And with that, I believe where he was going with this is the city of Mount Shasta is significantly behind in sales tax, and that would be a very easy way to mitigate this and get a balanced budget. But there was some other point that he made that I am not remembering.
You remember?
I think so. What he said was there are 3 areas in which you can increase the revenue to the general fund. 3 main things. One is property tax, which you don't want to touch, is what he said. 2 is TOT, which you've started to handle. And the 3rd is sales tax.
There's another way. It's called reduce expenses. Okay. It leaves more money in the general fund.
Okay. So,
Go ahead.
Yeah, so what we're doing here is looking at a preliminary budget. The more final budget will be a 2-year budget, sometime a couple months from now. All right, so staff is looking for direction. Your direction is clear. Let's work towards a balanced budget right now. So I'm going to try and sum this up as best I can. So Muriel is projecting a $6.6 million revenue line for 24-25. It's on page 44 for all of you who want to take a look at it. Now, that is a projection. I'm actually quite worried about that, not because of Muriel's predictive abilities. It's because I'm worried that there's some recessionary forces possibly at work that may hinder our growth sales tax-wise. That's my worry because of what I do and what I'm seeing. And it's backed up with the flat growth of the sales tax and very slight growth, well, actually decrease in the sales tax year to date, and only slight growth in the TOT. So do we have some sort of situation here in California? Yes. Do we have a situation here in Mount Shasta where people are cutting back on their spending? And I would have to say yes. They may be coming out to the hotels and doing things in our area, but they're cutting back on their spending at restaurants and so forth. And it's reflected in the actual numbers year to date. That is worrisome. Will that turn around? I can't say for sure what's going to happen the rest of this year. The other prediction, and I think it's more firm, is on the expense side, which is at $6.9 million, and therefore we have a $300,000 deficit. It's going to be hard to approach zero deficit in 24, 25, even with a sales tax increase, because that sales tax increase would be voted on in November. Question is whether you go for a quarter or half. I think quarter maybe actually, since it's a general tax and therefore only has to pass with 50% plus one, has a decent chance of passing, especially if it's some sort of clarity as to why it's critical, without marketing it, but at least making it clear why it's critical. That wouldn't take effect until at earliest January 1st of 2025. So you'd only have half a year of those monies. So if we are going to approach a balanced budget for 24, 25, it's going to have to be on the expense side unless some serious growth happens in business activity. And I don't foresee that. I think there might be some decent growth, but it's not going to be that great. So that is what we're going to have to grapple with for 24, 25, whether we're going to give staff direction to cut, I don't know, 3%. But since 65% of our costs are in employee salaries and benefits, and you even said you don't want to go there, Mr. Budget Hawk, it's going to have to be in other areas. And frankly, I don't know what particulars in each department, spend less money on tires for the two gentlemen at the end of the line here, spend less money on gas, what? And
I'd love to comment on that when you're done.
Okay, so we could give direction in that way. Look for 3%. 3% of $6 million, 180,000, something there. He wants to.
I just wanted to bring up one of the largest personnel-related expenses in the general fund is the pension expense. And we have information coming down the chute that can dramatically impact that cost in a positive way for the budget. So.
But not.
By flattening the curve.
But not in 24, 25.
Not in 24, 25. I'm more.
In fact, it's going to go up in 24, 25.
Correct.
Yeah. But long term, no, we're focusing on the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
Mr. Collins wants us to shoot for a balanced budget. I'm saying if we agree to that goal, it's going to have to be done on the expense side. If we were to put to the people a sales tax increase in November, I don't think it's going to help us that much because it's only going to be a 6-month period where that's in effect in that first half of 25.
I have more comments, but I think I'm number 3 now. So I'll circle back. Go ahead.
Let's go with Mr. Stearns.
Yeah, I don't see that we are going to realistically achieve a balanced budget in 24, 25. we could reduce that 310,000 estimated deficit if we were to defer $75,000 to the equipment fund. We have done that in hard years in the past. What we have done in recent past, and I don't recommend just not putting $75,000 into the equipment fund year after year. That was where I came onto council, and we had to make up several years of deferred maintenance and replacement. But what we have done in recent past, I think, is defer putting the $75,000 in the initial budget and then taking a look at it and making adjustment, I think, in February at the mid-year budget meeting.
We did that one of the first years I was here too.
Yeah. So that's one possibility, so we get a little opportunity to see the flexibility that we might have up or down.
If I can add for a point of reference, I think the idea of a sales tax revenue increase, it depends on timing, because I think ultimately people with the TOT increase and the drainage impact vote, I'm worried about tax fatigue. But if we're looking at where we're at, 7.5%, Dunsmuir's at 7.75%, Weed is where we are, 7.5%, and the city of Wairika is at 7.75%, and they're going for a full 1% increase, so they're going to 8.75%, just for frame of reference.
Your thoughts on expense reduction?
First, to kind of continue on what the city manager was talking about, if there's a sales tax initiative on this November's ballot, and we're asking for drainage fee, impact fees increases, and potentially a fire fee increase, which hasn't been increased in decades.
And that one goes on the property tax bill, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that the reality of trying to, in addition to being against a revenue sales tax where we stick our hands into our local citizens' pockets versus a TOT, which is for visitors, I'm just against that, and I said that I would not want to reduce complement or to give anybody a haircut, as in reduce their salaries, but $310,000 can be made up in 3 steps with no problem at all.
Okay, can you explain how?
Step 1.
They're right here, they're listening.
Yeah.
Step 1, $75,000 equipment fund.
Defer that.
Just no.
Just cancel period.
Cancel period. There's no, for the first 3 years in a row when I was on city council, 2013, 14, and 15, we put no money in the equipment replacement fund because money was tight. We were running a negative, we just didn't have it. $75,000 there, another $40,000. This. We spend 40 grand doing this. Somehow we got along just fine for decades up until 3 years ago without this. This came about initially as a function of, hey, we've got COVID money that we can only spend in certain categories, and this is one of them. Let's do this. Plus, we couldn't have people come in. Great. Well, those times are gone. Here's 40 grand here. And third, increases in salary, automated increases in salary. Stop them or find other categories, because there's lots of small chunks like snow removal, which will, for the first time, as Ken, you and I were talking about, having all the people who get the benefits of our current snow policy pay for it, and there's at least 50% that relative to where we plowed who don't pay. And so either don't incur the expenses of contract snow removal from center berming or have them paid. And they vote, whichever way it goes, our expenses drop down significantly. Maybe it's 20 grand, I don't know. I mean, how much it snows is unknown, but those fees get sent out to those that are getting the services. And I just suggest that, you know, we can, with a reasonable amount of effort, if in fact we just decide that, wait a minute, we need to figure out how to live within our means. We can't take on debt like the state or the feds can. And should we be able to live within our means and provide the services that we're hired to manage for the city without digging deeper into the pockets of the people that we're trying to serve? We're already asking them to dig deeper into their pockets. First, like the drainage fee, which I will stand up and be the first person in line to go, we need that. We've been charged $1 a year for the last 30 years. That's obviously doing nothing towards any maintenance on the drainage fund. I'm just making a plea that we defer this vote on this current budget.
Okay, so this is a discussion piece item. So there'll be no vote here, no action taken. So we are looking to give staff some direction.
Yeah, and
Go ahead, you can finish.
well, I just would like to make a request that they look again and spend some more time trying to figure out, with protecting people being top of mind. There's no reason to reduce anybody's current salaries under any set of circumstances. Stop some increases? Potentially. I don't know where the other nooks and crannies are. The nooks and crannies are, you know, some of them aren't big numbers. They're 5 grand here and 15 grand there. But if you add them up with this and a $75,000 equipment replacement fund, you're at 110 you're down to 200 already. And just see what you can find. I'm making a request for that, and I'm not quite sure how everybody else feels.
Go ahead, Tessa.
About whenever it was that we did the big raises, maybe 12 or 18 months ago, I believe that the anticipated results were that in last fiscal year we would have about a $500,000 to $600,000 deficit. In year 2, we would recoup some of that with the TOT and have a $300,000 deficit. So in my mind, Muriel has done exactly what we were anticipating. So I'm not following why it's an immediate, we need a balanced budget right now, when this is exactly what was brought before us when we made that decision to do the big salary increases. So I would be comfortable in saying 25, 26, let's get a balanced budget then. But for right now, we have the reserve, it's doing what it's intended to do. And I think we will recoup if we do some of those things, but I don't see the need to do it immediately.
May I respond, Mayor?
Yes.
You're correct in that we got into this, the number that we were given is we're going to lose $1 million. And it'll be spread out relative to what Muriel had seen at the time. Of course, she's got to look 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Not particularly a fun thing to do, but with reasonable revenue increases, it was going to be $400,000 the first year, $300,000 the second, $200,000 the third, and $100,000 the fourth, adding up to $1 million. Well, the first year wasn't 400, it was 475. The second year isn't 300, it's 510. And the third year isn't 200, it's 310, and we're at 1.3 million. And you will, if you take away the increase in revenue that wasn't mentioned when we got into this, we're at another $500,000 deficit projected for next year. And that's because, in part because of salaries going up, which are fine. They're up on a higher base, so a small 2% increases become larger numbers because the bases are larger. And where we can afford that, great. But we are quickly, if we have a 300, we're at 18-ish% in the reserve. 15 is suggested. The year after that, maybe we get to a balanced budget, maybe we don't, because again, salaries are going to continue going up without additional revenue coming in, or unless something else gives. Something else might be more revenue, that might happen, and of course that's what we all thought was going to happen. I mean, we all thought, yeah, we were going to have kind of these normal 2, 3, 4% increases in revenue, and that would have worked. It's just not showing up. And it brings me back to the central question last year, and I've said it about every 3 or 4 months, which is we had a $2.7 million once-in-a-lifetime reserve. How do we want to spend it? That's it's just a question. We're not going to go out of business. It's just how do we want to spend that money? And we said, well, we'll spend $1 million of it on salary increases. We all got into it knowing that. But we've got parking places that we'd like to buy and some other things that I think others on the council would like to get done and have that. And it isn't going to come out of cash flow because we're struggling to get to break even. It's got to come out of the reserve. It's where the money comes from when you do those incremental types of projects like a parking lot or some other scenarios that have been talked about that are projects that we'd like to do that don't get grant funding. I guess I'm just asking for some more thought about, well, what do we want to do? And if the answer is we just can't do those other things, we're going to have to be content with salary increases, well, okay, that's okay. It isn't okay with me, but, you know, I'm just one vote. I just wanted to respond.
All right, is there any other, I'm going to summarize what I think has been said here. Any other comments? All right, I believe staff that the direction from council at this point is look to make expense reductions in the area of around 3%. That's going to be about $200,000 across all departments. It's already been more than hinted at that the $75,000 transfer to the equipment fund should just be canceled, and I don't see any protest there on that one. Then there are other expenses that we incur, and I'll just say them right out, and sorry, Tessa, it's going to hurt some of these organizations. You may have to look at those, not necessarily eliminate them, but reduce them. And yeah, Studio 22 is mentioned, and so forth. So there are significant possibilities of reduction, not elimination, of costs to non-salary areas. The Muriel's number here for 24-25 for salary employee costs, I assume that's the whole package, is 63.5%. When I started this in 2016, we were up around 78%. So because of general revenue growth, despite much improved wages and salaries for those folks that get salaries, the actual percentage of the budget going to employees is dropping. Mm-hmm. So that means there's room, if we're not going to change that, we have to look at non-salary items and see if there's some room for reduction. And at this point, I would say that's the direction. Doesn't seem to be any taste for going for a tax increase at this point. And if that changes, folks, that has to be decided by June 30th. It has to be completely up at the county before June 30th.
I think we would be better off in not seeking a sales tax increase this year, but waiting at least a year.
Yeah,
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah.
No matter, and this is just my opinion, no matter how you look at this, and no matter how many times I've said this, which I've said it numerous times, sometimes I feel like Charlie Brown's teacher, the wah, 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 and it's truly the way I feel, is that an increase in sales tax, in my opinion, is inevitable. One of the things that we're doing, trying to do this year, and there is going to be some tax issues with other stuff that's going forward. So now is not the time, as Councilmember Stearns pointed out. But I do think equipment replacement, it's fine to kick that can down the road, but at some point you're going to have to buy equipment. And one of the things that previous councils have done is to create that equipment replacement fund. It was created for a purpose. That purpose is to replace equipment that is eventually going to have to happen. So kicking the can down the road with expenses is one thing. Kicking the can down the road for sales tax or revenue increases is another. And I really think, in my opinion, that not in this year, but in the following year, that is something you're absolutely going to have to do. And if I'm going nah, 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 again, then that's what I'm doing, and I'm going to continue to do that. So just reminding you all that that's my opinion.
So off the top of your head, the 1/4% sales tax for the library brings in about...
I think it should be a 0.5%.
Oh, we're getting aggressive now.
I would agree with 0.5%, but not this year.
Not this year.
You can't do it at the same time. You've got the other increases.
So
Strategically, it may be much more palatable to do it after Wairika raises its sales tax.
So just for clarity, what will a 1/4% sales tax is 400,000 right now? Is that what the
It's about that. It's actually short of that.
Okay, so assume it passes, a whole 0.5% sales tax would be $750,000. So that takes care of.
Here's
So the thing is, we're dealing with the next fiscal year. So my riff was to say there doesn't seem to be any, now completely, around the corner here, any interest in pursuing a sales tax increase this November, correct? Yes. So if we're going to improve the deficit situation at all for 2024-25, there will have to be some shaving of costs. And I'm not recommending, and I don't think anyone else will, that we forego equipment improvements and purchases forever. If we're talking about one time. And kicking the can, we're not kicking the can. We're just talking about what realistic cost reductions can occur in the next 12, call it 15 months, and bring it back to us. But remember, we're looking for two-year fiscal budgets now. So this is actually something a little more interesting that we are going to be voting on by the end of June, because it's not just about 25, it's about 25, 26 also, which may or may not include a sales tax. We'll have to just assume there's not going to be a sales tax increase, but we may put it on the ballot. But then again, it could be a different council too at that point. Remember, there might be some changes. So it seems like the direction is pretty limited to just shaving some costs as best we can, staff, and there you go.
Something else needs to be pointed out in that Councilmember Collings mentioned the fire tax, which is basically on property owners based on if it's an improved lot or there's Measure G
or something like that. Yeah.
The wording of Measure G is that funding can only be used for equipment. Now, for the district's wording of their measure is a little different, in which for the district, they're able to use that assessment for not only equipment, they can use it for personnel as well. The wording is very different. I think it's like 2 words or something, but it's enough to say that if you're changing that particular measure, I would suggest that the wording be changed to make it more not just for equipment, but to expand it to mean it for personnel as well. That's because right now it's limited.
So now this will have to be voted on in November? This Measure G?
I don't-
The changes to Measure G?
I don't know if
I
we'll be-
don't know if
we'll be ready.
any
It's-
movement for that.
So the district, their measure passed in the 80s. Our measure passed in the 90s, and they're both low. The problem with the district is you've got to get the Board of Supervisors to support this increase. And, I don't know what leverage we have other than to say, okay, well, if we can, I don't know if we can, rescind the measure for the people in our sphere of influence in the district and say, well, if we're not able to cover this, then we've got to call CAL FIRE in to provide your coverage. It's a harsh move, but I mean, if we can't get the county to move on a measure, maybe that's one of the ways we need to go. And here in the city, again, I mean, these have been kicked down the can way too long. Same thing with the drainage fee. It's been 30 years since, this $1 has been in place. Of course, the hit's large because nothing's been done since then. And if they were incremental increases, it would be easier to absorb.
All right, so does staff have direction as far as trying to
Yeah.
improve the budget situation? All right, so we're going to move on to item number 9. The audited financial statements. The auditor is Charles Pillin.
Yep.
And Muriel has the floor on introducing this item. Also, this is going to lead to a vote on resolution.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you are the audited financial statements for the 22-23 fiscal year for City of Mount Shasta and the Mount Shasta Public Financing Authority. Finance Committee met with our auditor, a couple of weeks ago, I believe. And before you are the audited financial statements. I would like the committee to actually chime in on these financial statements for this year, rather than me going through each and every particular item here and hit the bigger points, please.
So, thank you, Muriel. I'm going to have are you CPA too? Yeah. The CPA amongst us speak on this item first. Go ahead, Tessa.
Thank you. Just a little preface. I used to spend most of my working life auditing, but I am a bit rusty. It's been about a decade or so since I've done this. So, but the biggest takeaway is that they issued a clean opinion on the audit. So in all material aspects, everything was presented fairly, with a caveat that there was a finding this year because Charlie had to make some material adjustments. This is not uncommon for cities. So what's new for me, I don't know if it's new for Muriel, but you have to submit a response saying, I plan to blah, 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 and that becomes part of the complete package. Outside of that, we met and combed through the financials pretty thoroughly. There are the government-wide financial statements, which gets the entire city on a full accrual basis, where you can see actual assets in the general fund, which according to GAAP doesn't happen. So that's the only interesting part, where you can see exactly how much the general fund actually owns. Because in our budget and normal financial statements, that's never really presented. Then the big thing that we've been talking about is the pension, where it decreased this year. So they are anticipating a large increase next year for pension cost, which also, the way I understand it is it takes a while for this bell curve to happen because of the way that we pay it out over time. So if we don't change the way that we do things, we will end up having a very, very large pension expense in a very short time, like within the next 4 to 5 years. There are a number of ways and strategies to go about this. So the Finance Committee, City Manager, and of course Muriel are looking at ways to mitigate that. That was a large takeaway. The other parts that I always like to go to are the financial health of the enterprise funds, which is on page, where am I here? Well, maybe I don't have it.
Do you want to just go to general?
No, I was going to go to the enterprise.
Where is the breakout?
Yeah. Basically, I can't go item by item, but in summary, the sewer fund always does really well. The sewer fund is healthy. The garbage fund is kind of an in and out. We pay our the contractor to come in, do their thing, and we collect enough to cover those costs. The water fund is hanging in there, but isn't the star of the show by any means. And then the drainage fund is consistently losing money. So that is, in my mind, one of the biggest needs outside of the fact that our drainage system is in desperate need of repair. So even if we had perfect drainage systems set up right now, we aren't charging enough to cover just the normal operations. So those were my biggest takeaways. Charlie had great things to say, and yeah, looking forward to next year.
Just as when we're talking about pension, part of what we're talking about is not necessarily the costs that we're paying for the people who are here right now. We're paying for people who are retired, which is part of the unfunded pension liability. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about having to come up with a plan, which I'm suggesting that we do. The cost of that plan is about $10,000 to determine a plan moving forward, which would come to the Finance Committee and then, of course, to Council to see about how we do that, whether it be a 115 plan, whether it be, there's a lot of things that we can do, and we'd like to get those experts in to help us determine a plan moving forward to out into the future, make the costs that the city is having to pay actually lower and predictable moving into the future. So I'm looking forward to moving forward with that, and I think that the Finance Committee would agree that we've had a couple of presentations that we've done, one with CalPERS and another with the Weist Company and Cal Muni, I believe they're called, to try to come up with a plan moving forward for that unfunded pension liability that a lot of other places within the state of California are looking at. Anyway, that's what we're talking about moving forward. Yes, sir.
And the $10,000, that's a $10,000 contract with a third party to come up with a plan.
To develop a plan, to give the Finance Committee and Council the ability to take a look at what type of plan, how much risk do we want to take moving forward?
We have to give them some direction.
Yeah, they're going to give us some direction, yes, indeed.
We need to give them direction what we favor.
Correct.
I favor refinancing. I'm not sure my partners
Yeah, there's
agree with that.
basically 3 options. One is you can prepay some. It's like a mortgage. So if you prepay the principal down, then you save the interest or, that kind of thing later down the road. You can refinance. And That's what the mayor is talking about. Or there's this thing called a 115 trust, which is another way to kind of move money somewhere else and pay this off, or a bulk of it off ahead of time to save money. So there are 3 major ways. And I agree.
And we'll have discussion about that in the future.
Yeah.
But the $10,000 approximate cost for the contract is in the budget.
Not yet,
Not yet?
but it will be. That, as well as actually the yearly fee moving forward is a little under $2,000 a year to actually revisit that plan and tweak that plan as we move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you finished? Okay, so what can I add to this, these comments of Council Member Clore? I came away thinking that to the extent that Springbrook has long-term debt module, we should probably add that. And this is related to the public financing.
I did.
Yeah.
You already did?
Yeah.
When did?
That was
No,
after
they're
our
developing,
initial-
they're actually still developing that
Okay, so
module.
when that is developed, we should buy that.
Yeah.
That
I
will
think
help. That will help everyone in that department out, right? Okay.
Following our initial feedback from the Springbrook call, I believe Muriel added both the fixed assets and the long-term debt to the package.
Well, the long-term debt hasn't been added yet because they haven't developed it yet.
Right.
So.
But part of the plan.
Yes, it's
Yes.
part of the plan,
But
indeed.
so you intend to buy? Okay.
Yes,
So
and they'll be starting the project will be starting mid-April.
Wow.
So my impression is that that is a worthy investment on our part, what we've already committed to with respect to Springbrook, and it will make the management and efficiency of that department much more current, up-to-date, modern, and so forth. I think everyone working there will be happier people. Just my impression. There's a few things that the auditor said that need to happen. One of them is to have a policy and work out a program to deal with our pension situation. And I just have to warn you, on the front side, pretty much all the solutions are going to involve a little, if not substantial, increase in costs in the first 2 or 3 years, and then it levels out, and it's better than what's coming by a lot, and that's where you start saving money. So that's the 4 to 5 years that Councilmember Clore is talking about, and then depending on what plan we adopt, there's big savings on the tail end. So that's for us to analyze later. And so there's a little pain up front, then we have predictability, and then we have when our liabilities are completely funded, when the pension plan is completely funded, is when you start saving some money. So that's something that takes anywhere from 10 to 30 years, depending on what you do. But yeah, there's a few other technical things regarding policies that seem to need some attention. All that, if you feel like reading through this in detail, I suggest when you have about 3 to 5 hours, you do that. It's very dense with interesting points. Basically, from a balance sheet standpoint, our city is really healthy. It's not that it's changed dramatically from the prior years. It's just that we have very good net equity, net positive equity. You never want to have negative equity, in which case that's a disaster, but we're healthy along the balance sheet line. And we're a little bit upset about the way things are going with respect to operations. And I'm a little bit concerned about the water utility, because we've had a rate increase and it doesn't seem to be making that much of a difference. It lost money last year meeting ending June 30th, 2023, a couple $100,000, but I do think there are some more scheduled increases in that.
There is.
Yeah, so that might make up the difference. Somewhere in here I read that there are no projects at all for 2023 24, 25, but
Yeah,
there's the
what
water
will we-
project, right?
What will we do with our time?
No, isn't there a big water project that Pace has planned for Orem to Old McLeod Road? Huge project.
Yes, but I don't believe construction is going to be until 25, 26. I think there's probably
Oh,
going to
they're
be some
gonna s-
planning stuff.
Oh, they're
and-
going to
yeah.
skip a year. Okay.
And we may have some changes going forward to develop some STIP projects, actually using funding from some other areas. The local transportation fund, for instance, may be able to, what we found with the STIP fund that we have going forward, which is actually for this area out here, was that the actual cost was going to be more than we have coming in for the project. So we were going to have to postpone doing that until we had some additional funding coming from STIP. But what we found was we may be able to use some of the local transportation funds to bridge that gap and actually do that particular project. So you'll be updated when we know that.
All right, so point of order, we sort of skipped public comment on this and went through clarifying questions and discussion. So we're going to have to go to public comment now. Would anyone like to comment? And this is public comment, it's not a hearing, right? Okay. Would anyone like to comment on our audit report? Okay, no, anyone with their hands raised? Okay. So we're back to possible motion unless we need to comment on this more.
I just wanted to make a little plug here about the rising costs of the pension that we can help with, but as long as we have employees and as long as those employees retire and we continue to pay these costs, we really need to be a pro-growth council. We need to work on jobs and economic development and housing. Otherwise, we will not be able to keep up with this in that manner.
So are you saying we need more people paying more sales taxes and having more relatives come and have more tourism in
babies,
some way?
go to
And less
school.
expenses.
Well, growth of expenses that's underneath that growth in revenue, yes, absolutely. Revenue goes up 10%, growth of expenses only goes up 4%. That's what we're looking for. All right, so can we get a motion, Mayor Pro Tem? Okay, we're good.
Motion to approve resolution CCR 24-07, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta accepting the independent audit reports and single audit for fiscal year 22-23.
Second.
Title only.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, reports from outside meetings. So Tessa and I basically through this meeting have talked about the Finance Committee, the ad hoc Finance Committee meetings that we've been through. So I don't think we need to comment anymore. Do you?
No, but the LTAC meeting, I was gonna.
What?
The LTAC.
Ah, the library, yes, that did fall within.
We've been busy this week.
That did fall within the two meetings. And so this is about the Nolan Tam meeting we had prior to the public meeting. And so go ahead, Tessa.
Basically, I think what the information that was brought to the public meeting is pretty similar to what was brought to our committee meeting. The only difference is, and I'm going to go first so that you hear positive information before the mayor steps in.
I'm going to not be cheerful.
When asked, now I want to preface this with Nolan Tam has been contracted to give us basically a scope of project and community outreach and give us an idea of what it could look like. They are not in contract to build this. So I think that's an important distinction. And when they brought us beautiful plans, and it's basically, there's a list of normal functionalities that libraries have, ranging from the modest to the extreme, and their job is to gather information from the public as to what is most important to us. So they gathered information from our committee, and now they're gathering information from the public. And once they have that list, they work within our budget to see what's most important out of that list, and we start from there, either contract with them or someone else, and then we try to build within our means to get something started. Now, when asked how much that will cost per square foot, I think the going rate for commercial construction locally is around the $400 to $500 per square foot range. And they were quoting at the most extreme high range, $1,200 per square foot. Now, in my mind, they were doing a couple things. One, they're used to San Francisco rates, and two, they were covering their rear ends so that it won't exceed that. I think that's absolute worst case scenario. And we are in control of our budget, of course, in relation to this project, and we are in control of who we pick to do that portion of the build. So I do not think it's a, oh, well, that was fun while it lasted. I just think that we need to be clear with our means and make sure that that's heard up front.
You stole my thunder there, thanks. But so real quick, so Nolan Tam, right, is going to find out, this is the scoping part of this process, to find out what we really need. And one of the things they did mention extensively was turning this library into a community center too. And along those lines, I think it would behoove us to have our city attorney look at the language from the quarter-cent sales tax measure from, I don't know, 2013, whenever it was, that says how dedicated those funds have to be. So if you're changing the nature of the library to a library/community center, do we have to have another vote to okay that use of the taxes? Basically expand the measure before somebody steps up and says, no can do, you can't do that. And in other words, we go through all this planning and design, and someone says, no, it's only for library use. And what's this business about outside groups, including the council, coming in and doing non-library stuff? I think it'll pass if we have, that's another possible November vote, but it's just I don't know, since the tax exists, you're basically just asking the public permission to expand the use of the tax. Is it a 50% or does it have to be a 2/3? I don't know. I don't think we should take chances with that. Because what was interesting at the meeting was that the LTAC leader, Evelyn Callis, was quite explicit about opening up the use of the library for council chambers, amongst other things. So that was refreshing in a way, because I hadn't seen that much interest from Friends of the Library, because she's the Friends of the Library. She's on LTAC, but she's also the leader of Friends of the Library. I hadn't really seen that type of enthusiasm about non-library uses. And so that was a big change, I thought, that level of explicit consent. And so I think it's important for us to make sure we handle this right. So they're going to come back, that's at Nolan Town, they're going to come back with a idea for us to, that would be the Library Expansion Committee, to look at with respect to increased square footage. And at $1,200 a square foot, the question I had is does that include all the furnishings, all the fixtures? Maybe that's why it's so high. Did they clear that up?
No, you stormed out.
I had to go to work, but.
Does it include the
curtains?
The gold toilets?
Yeah.
Negotiation tactic?
Well, I was kind of obnoxious on the way out, I have to admit, but something to the effect that, well, that's the end of that, yeah, but I think more realistically, 600, isn't that going to do it? $600 a square foot?
Yeah, I think that it will be within our means to make this happen.
So to me, I just have a feeling to have this type of square footage for a community room, it's going to require an expansion probably, I'm just guessing, I'm just going to put it out there, probably at least 2,000 square feet. The Mount Shasta engineering design that was panned and basically forgotten it was $250,000 to do that one, was a doubling of the square footage. So it's a 4,000 square foot facility right now. Nick and company at Mount Shasta Engineering had this going to 8,000 square feet. So that was a pretty ambitious project. I just have a feeling Nolan Tam's not going to ask for that. It's not going to suggest that much square footage, but we'll see. And then they're probably going to have a pretty interesting renovation for the original 4,000 square feet, which I don't see costing anywhere near $600 a square foot. How much do rentals cost here in this renovations? Rentals.
Oh,
300 maybe?
300, yeah.
So I think with the $1.4 million saved in reserve, Friends of the Library has something like $700,000 that they want to spend on, mostly on interior improvements, like furniture and stuff. It's going to be a project that, given that the sales tax income continues as it has for the last few years, we should be able to finance this. When you finance, so you're gonna have a down payment from the reserve, right? And then we're gonna finance the balance. There has to be a cushion between our cash flow from the tax and the payment, the construction loan payment of at least 20%. And we have to not forget that even though Friends of the Library is mostly a volunteer organization, there are still costs. They're running the library. There are still costs to running the library. So we'll see. We'll see what Nolan Tam comes up with, and we'll see how feasible this project is. I think before the $1,200 per square foot, I thought it was very feasible. I talked myself in, after I left, I work in the numbers, and I talked myself back into thinking it's doable, so
Good.
I'm okay.
I just wanted to make note, I know everyone here knows this, but in case anyone's listening or for the minutes, if anyone's wondering how in the world can we be thinking about expanding a library when we're in one breath talking about a deficit, I just wanted to be clear that this is a separate fund that was designated with a 0.25% sales tax many years ago, so this is completely different.
All right, so I think it was approximately 2013, maybe earlier, and it passed over 70%.
Yeah.
And the language is pretty explicit. I have read the raw language of the measure in the past, and it's pretty explicit. The funds are supposed to be used only for library uses. So if we are going to expand the use of the library, we might want to analyze that. But if our attorney says it's no big deal, then I guess we don't do anything.
To give a little historical context, the idea of a community room as part of the library to be used for meetings, including city council meetings and planning commission meetings, has been part of the plan for at least 20 years. When Russ Porterfield was on city council, he and I were the subcommittee, the library subcommittee, that met with Friends of the Library, and back in those ancient days, that was part of the plan. So this is just
So we're consistent.
coming forward a couple of decades or a quarter century later.
All right, so thank you, Tim. There are no other reports on outside meetings. All right, let's move on to future agenda items. I'm not going to read through this. Would anyone like to add items to this? Go ahead.
So I mentioned this to you a couple weeks ago, but with the snow removal issue, where the downtown business district is separate from the south end of town, and there's talk of them forming their own district possibly to deal with all this stuff. I have the idea that since the district lines were drawn in 57 or 52, whatever the year was, is 57, then maybe it's time to relook at that and redraw them. To maybe they even include me over on Chestnut with the other redheaded stepchildren businesses
I'll second.
of the downtown.
So we want to redraw the lines of the downtown parking district?
Business district.
Business district. Is there a difference?
It's gone by various names
Yeah.
over the years.
So no, I'm actually serious about this.
Yeah.
How many districts do we have downtown? Do we have one, two?
We have one.
And it's,
And
By
it's
various names.
Defined, there's a map that was part of
saw the map.
the original ordinance.
and the word parking is in there somewhere as far as what that district.
There are a number of purposes set forth in the ordinance, parking being one of the several purposes.
Okay, so we're talking, for staff's sake, we're talking about expanding
Or
business
looking
district.
at it to make sure it still makes sense. And
In general?
In my theory, just to begin with, is just redrawing things from basically minimum of Spring Hill Nursery all the way down.
Oh, a big business
Well,
district.
just like
Yeah.
make everybody involved that way, you know, same thing. So then the entire business district is
Okay,
paying.
did you,
Anyways,
Did
I just want to redraw the lines. We don't have to get into it right now.
did businesses have to vote yes to join the district at one point?
That's correct. Its ordinance includes a self-assessment, that $12 a year,
Yeah,
and
it's a good deal.
it had to get the majority vote of the properties within the district. And DEAC has looked at this over probably the past couple of years at least.
All right, do you have one?
I don't, but Kathy, can you remind us when the Lola meeting is? April 10th.
All right. Okay, so Todd, this is going to make you cringe, but I have to bring this up because I keep dealing with people that have tree sidewalk problems in my daily goings on. And staff, including yourself, say we're not fixing these things. The problem is we fixed a lot of them for no cost to building owners.
But we adopted a sidewalk policy, and we have a new ordinance. And, you know, we said in the passage of that we would, you know, it is on the property owner, but in cases where, say, we've planted a tree.
Right, that's in there.
And that's something that we'll assess, like, you know.
So do we need to do an assessment? The 200 block on the east side, I'm not sure if those are city trees, but on the west side of the 200 block of Mount Shasta Boulevard, those trees were replaced. The complete 300 block has been improved along these lines of tree replacement. Parts of Lake Street have, parts of Alma. But I don't know that the job is complete. The question is, how many more trees and sidewalks do we need to repair? Not necessarily an agenda item, because you're conceding that it's in the code, so what do we do? Just, you guys will get around to budget issues, I understand that, but your thoughts, just...
Well, I think Ken and I need to get together and figure out how we're going to do this and roll this out after we look at assessments of what is our trees, where they planted, and what type of liability the city picks up. Do we fix the sidewalk? They remove the trees? You know, what is the course of action?
Or replace the inappropriate trees with more appropriate trees, which is what we were doing prior to your arrival.
Yeah, I mean, so I need to look at the language of the ordinance that we passed. You know, I don't know how vague that is. I think we need to ensure that, you know, again, we've made this clear at council that the California law says that the sidewalk, whether or not we planted a street tree that isn't inappropriate or not, it's the owner's responsibility, period. But we said something different. So we need to get out there and figure out where the worst spots are and figure out what our liability is and how we take care of it.
And along those lines, it sounds like the rubble that the gentleman spoke of at the beginning of the meeting may not have been related to a tree, but understand that staff will take care of that problem or
I don't
that
know.
issue?
I mean, if that's the property owner's sidewalk and they've let it go.
So that's going to be Forest Service or UP, so
It is, yes.
how do we move on that?
One way or the other?
Yeah.
So basically, code enforcement's going to go out. We're going to identify who the property owner is. If the sidewalk is in disrepair, they're going to get served the notice to repair. They have the 30 days to show us that they've taken action to either get a contractor or work. If they don't, then they get another 30 days to show us that they've made efforts to get it fixed. After that 60 days, if they don't fix it, then the city has the right to fix the sidewalk and put a lien on the property from the owners. That's pretty much the essential on that. And then as far as the trees go, we have two different ordinances got to work with. One, so under our tree ordinance, in order to remove a street tree, they have to have permission from the director, Public Works Director, and it has to meet a certain criteria of why that tree can be removed in the first place. And then any damage that's done to the sidewalk, it falls under our sidewalk ordinance, and there is a caveat put in there that it's up to the city manager to determine if there's anything that the city had done that maybe assist with it. But the reality of the whole program, again, is it's the owner's responsibility to keep the sidewalks in good repair and stuff. And we are going out and starting to give people notices and saying, hey, it's time to fix your sidewalks, let us know what you're going to do. So that is going on.
Well, and the equitable thing is if the city caused the problem in the first place, if the city can bring it back to satisfactory condition, then going forward, the
Problem is, people know that certain property owners had their trees and sidewalks
Yeah, but
replaced and repaired
and that's-
at the city expense.
But that's the past. We passed an ordinance since then, and
But no, in the audience, we admit it, we're conceding that we've had problems with trees. I mean,
yeah, and we shouldn't have been doing it, so that's why we passed the ordinance. I mean, again,
no, the ordinance was passed to make it clear that all these negligent building owners get around to fixing their sidewalks, which is based on the ALTA, and then the prior report from 2010 might be in the majority for disrepaired versus not disrepaired sidewalks. That's how bad it is. But no, with respect to city trees, the city is, Tim, you were here, the city has conceded that that was a mistake and has proceeded to pick up the cost of replacing them. To turn back on that policy is going to be met with some opposition.
but we haven't done that since the ordinance was passed. I mean, we're making assessments based on whether or not we planted the tree and whether it is inappropriate. And some trees were the appropriate trees, they've just been in too long. We need to make that determination, and that's been on Ken Kellogg's shoulders for now.
Well, I think that's going to make some people very upset.
I know.
And so if you end up in court, then you'll have to deal with it, I guess.
To the chair.
as long as it's equitable.
Yeah.
To the chair. Chief, I just wanted to make sure that the parking and city lots, that's coming to council at some point.
Yes, we'll have amendment to the parking ordinance on the 4/8/2024.
Beautiful.
Well, actually, on second thought, is anybody in favor of having clarifying language in the code that the city will pick up on these trees, these changes, these repairs, explicit language?
I would be supportive of putting that on a future agenda item.
Okay, then I agree with that. I'm suggesting it and you're supporting me. So yeah, let's look at continuing what we've been doing with respect to replacing these trees and the sidewalks that they destroyed as a matter of equity. Sorry.
Let's talk after the fact, because I'm not sure what that means. I mean, we've got an ordinance that we just passed that's in conflict with that.
I don't think so. I think if we caused the sidewalk damage because we planted the wrong trees, and in the past we've been replacing both the trees and the sidewalks, in some cases, I think it's equitable, and I think most people in this town and most people on this council are going to say we need to find the money to do that.
The
Thank you.
Downtown Improvement, Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee presented a proposed tree and sidewalk maintenance program to the council. It must have been, well, I guess about 4 years ago, which we modeled after another city, and that basically the other city had put that provision in, that if the city chose a tree that had broken up the sidewalk and caused the problems, that would return back to a normal condition, and thenceforth, going forward, the property owner would be responsible for the sidewalk. So that's not something that the city council acted on. It went back to Public Works Director. It was a Public Works Director at least one or two prior to Mr. Kellogg. So I don't know if it exists in his office somewhere or not, but I could probably provide a copy.
If we're going to roll this out and not break the budget, we're going to have to figure out what the worst sidewalk cases are and fix those and do this over time, because we just can't afford it.
Yeah, my recollection that it's been going on for a decade. I'm back to 2015 or thereabouts. Yeah, and then it stopped, but yeah. Anyhow, without objection, let's adjourn this meeting. It is currently 7:46. See you in 2 weeks.